Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video we're going to take a look at a company that at this point you have not heard of. The company that we're here to talk about today is Hydra Knives. So before we get too far, I'd like to say thank you very much to Hydra Knives who has provided this product for review today. Now Hydra Knives is brand new to you. They are brand new to me too, and basically brand new to everybody. So if you're watching this video for the first time as it has been released, at that point I'd say you probably haven't heard of Hydra Knives. Now if things go very well and you're watching this 5 years from now and you have heard of Hydra Knives, well congratulations Hydra Knives, you have officially made it to the marketplace. And with that, I will kick off this video to say Hydra Knives is a brand new knife company looking to make it to the market. They are from Spain in Europe and trying to make it to the market for the first time with their knife that here you will see the very first Buzzard. This is the Hydra Knives Buzzard, a very interesting little multi-purpose knife. Is it EDC? Is it a utility knife? Well, it's kind of both. This is a very interesting overall design that started its life as a hand-forged version. Now, even as a hand-forged version, it had all the little utility built into it, and Hydra Knives is very proud of this semi-innovative design. Now I say semi-innovative simply because the fact that we have seen knives in the past that have had a little utility built into them, but it is unique in the overall blade shape and style. It has a kind of signature look to it and is something that in my opinion would make an excellent overall utility knife. Now again, is this EDC? Is it a neck knife? What exactly is it? Well, we're going to get into that today, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what we're about to talk about, do me a favor. Stay tuned. So again, we're here today to talk about this Hydra Knives Buzzard. Now this Buzzard is an interesting model, again being in the, I would call it EDC or utility class of knife. This is made from European Standard 1.4116 cryogenically treated steel. So the Hydra Knives Buzzard has a reported 6.69 inch overall length with a 3.34 inch blade, 2.95 inch edge, and 3.34 inch handle. So generally speaking, there is just about as much handle as there is blade. So it should be a nicely balanced overall knife. Very small and easy to fit in your hands. One of the things that I do notice right away is that you do kind of end up with a couple of alternate grips. So you can grip the knife basically with a full handled grip, or if you want, you can kind of tuck your pinky in there to get a little more purchase. So with this overall knife size, definitely nice for something that is quite small and compact. Now this is, again, as I had mentioned, European Standard 1.4116 cryogenic steel. So about the equivalent of a 440 MOV. Now this is hollow ground and is something that has a very refined edge. And I'm wondering over time how this will hold up. So I'm hoping that for me, this would be a nice utility blade, something that I could definitely carry with me. It looks actually a little bit aggressive, has some aggressive styling, which is pretty cool, but at the same time is not this crazy large wieldy thing that would scare people away. I believe you definitely could get away with carrying this as a moderate sort of utility knife, and it looks very similar to other types of box cutters out there. So it's not something that would really catch you by surprise and scare you away. It actually has a look of a reasonable utility knife, only with a little bit nicer overall features. So one of the things we'll be looking at over time as I use this is the overall quality and heat treat. Now again, being cryogenically treated, this should be reasonably hard and durable. I'm hoping that over time this edge will hold up. Now right out of the box it is pretty razor sharp. you can pretty much see there with the hollow grind that this is capable of shaving, and I'm like a hairy dude, so that should show up pretty good that it does a nice job shaving. So a ridiculously fine and refined edge right out of the box. This thing is an absolute razor blade. Now this particular knife came with a satin finish. You can also get this with a black coated polyurethane polyester finish. Now this to me is something that could go either way. I am naturally drawn to the black finish. They sent me this for review and sent me the satin finish. You can see it does end up with fingerprints and whatnot, but not a big deal. This 440 should be plenty stainless and have no problems and no worry of rusting. Overall, other general features of the blade: nice mild jimping on the top and a good amount. That is actually right where your thumb's going to go. Now you can pinch the blade and do some good controlled work. You even have the ability, if you want to get your thumb kind of up on this choil. So this was designed very much as a utility blade in mind. You'll see that there is a sharpening choil on the back end of the blade, which is nice. I personally always like a knife with a sharpening choil for the ability to get this nice and sharp from the tip of the blade all the way back towards that finger guard. And in that regard, you will see that there is a moderate finger guard here, so a nice quality indexing overall. Now, not only do you have this mild jimping where your thumb goes up front, there is actually a little bit more at your fulcrum point. So there are a couple of different grips here, and they have thought about that. Depending on the positioning and what type of work you're going to be doing, you will grab this knife a little bit different. So you have two different sort of, call it, patterns of jimping here in different overall textures. So here a little bit more square, larger pattern, a little more rectangle, and a smaller, finer pattern, but in two areas where you are definitely going to rest your thumb. Now the fulcrum point is reasonably comfortable, nice and narrow, very small and controlled, so that works well for a knife that's intended to be a, call it, utility purpose. And then this sort of pinky hole here, I mean, it could go a couple different ways. This is kind of reminiscent of a karambit design where you end up with sort of that additional point where you're really indexing and holding the knife. Now, I don't think you would potentially use this as a fighting knife. It would certainly be able to be a last-ditch effort, but that is not the purpose. This is a multi-purpose EDC style multi-tool blade. So now as we get a little further into the details, you'll see that this does come with a Kydex sheath. Now this Kydex is capable of being carried on your neck, or it does also accept a clip typical to a style of tech lock. Getting the knife and placing it in, you'll see that it does index reasonably well molded overall, and actually has a little utility hole, and I will get into that in a little bit. For the most part, as I go over the sheath, the rivets are pressed in very well. They happen to be laid out in a pretty uniform pattern and overall reasonably well done. And on the sheath itself, when you look closely at the Kydex, it has been stamped for a little decorative pattern. Inside the actual pattern, it does have the Hydra Knives logo, so a nice little touch. However, as I get a little further into the details, I do see that the edges are okay. They're not great. They're kind of, I don't know, moderately well done. To me personally, I think they tried to put a nice detail of that thin white Kydex in there, but the Kydex itself is very thin. There's a couple things that I think. One, I think if they're going to use this exact Kydex, they should take just a little bit more time, just a little bit, to refine their edge, touch it up just a little bit more, and give it a little bit more polish. Now moving through this package, this is a bunch of stuff that Hydra Knives sent to me. I believe they may end up with hats available, but this is certainly not, I don't believe, going to be part of this package. So they did send me a hat, so thank you very much, Hydra Knives. And also this, I believe it's like a neck gaiter style or like a head buff sort of cloth, so definitely cool. I'm not sure if they're going to have this stuff available on their website for sale, but they did send it to me for some promotional purposes. A nice little personalized letter that they sent, so definitely cool. And this does go through all of their different details. So here you'll see a package that they put together. You have to imagine the work that these companies do to get these products out to reviewers. It is pretty impressive when you look at behind the scenes at some of this, and I know you guys don't always get these details, but a lot of companies will actually take the time and put together these little informational pamphlets, and they do a ton of work. So kudos to them. And so here you'll see them talking about the different specifics on the knife, and again, that European standard 1.4116, or about the equivalent of a 420 MOV. But if you look at the packaging here inside, a number of goodies. A Hydra Knives patch. So I'm not sure, again, if this is exactly going to come with the knife or not, but I believe it likely will. Hydra Knives information and their business card, the patch, which is cool. So a nice Velcro backed PVC morale patch. A bright orange lanyard, which is cool, paracord of sorts. But this here is an attachment that can be bolted right onto the side of the sheath. So you will notice that this can go in a number of different locations depending on how you want to mount it, and which is definitely pretty cool. But looking at it here, it does come with a Phillips bit. Now what is this for? Well, one of the features of this knife, again being sort of a multi-purpose utility knife, is that you can index these bits inside the blade to do some work. So if you had different bit kits or things like that, you definitely could use this as a multi-tool. So definitely cool. And one of the things that I appreciate, I always say you need to pay attention to the details, and that's exactly what Hydra Knives did here. So as you look at the sheath and you insert the knife, they made a nice hole in the Kydex to allow you to use the bit while the knife is in the sheath, nice and safe, and getting to work. You can use this in a couple of different positions, and now you definitely have your hands completely safe. But not only are your hands completely safe, now you actually have more leverage, and this is more centered in the middle of your hands where you can kind of get some good even torque on something. Now, this does come, like I said, with simply a Phillips bit. Certainly you could add a number of different bits to your kit depending on what you're doing and where you're going. Now, it's my job as a reviewer of this to come up with the good and the bad. I'm going to point out one small detail here. Now, as I look at the fabrication of this knife overall, generally speaking, it is very well done. There are very minor things that I'm going to complain about when it comes to the overall craftsmanship of this knife. But the very small things I am going to bring up, this bit fits okay in this direction, but barely at all in this direction. However, as I look in this opening, there is a very, very small burr. Now, again, very minor, but that burr is enough that it makes it very difficult to get this bit and almost impossible to get it to index in there properly. So in the future, I would pay very close to the fabrication. Make sure that little burr is not on the inside so you can properly use your bits on either side of the blade. Again, I'm being very nitpicky, but when you have a very nice product in your hands and you can take it from almost perfect to exactly perfect, well, why not point it out? I believe that this company, Hydra Knives, can take this from almost perfect to definitely perfect with minor modifications. And I'm only trying to do my job as a reviewer to point this out, not necessarily just to the viewers, but to the company as well, so they can make their minor improvements for future versions. So again, as I mentioned, this is capable of being mounted a number of different ways. So not just as a neck carry, but with a tech lock style clip. So this is called a tack clip, which is, I don't know, I'm not that familiar, but it looks to be about the exact same pattern as your typical tactical clip. So in that regard, you will notice that there are a number of different configurations that actually line up and allow you to use this in multiple positions. So a nice tack clip that comes directly with the knife. And here you'll see a small bag with some hardware. So as you get in here, couple other little fabricated belt loops. So you could put these on here like this and like this, with your actual hardware and simply thread your belt directly through it. Now as I look a little closer, you would not necessarily be able to do that Scout style, but not a big deal. You could simply use the tack clip. Now another thing worth noting is that this does come with an array of hardware capable of bolting everything on. So now just getting into a real quick paper test, you'll notice this is insanely laser sharp. Awesome edge right out of the box. A little bit of a tear there, mostly technique on my part. The entire edge, let's see here, definitely appears to be sharp, so the knife will cut. So being a utility knife, I think one of the main things that I would use it for would be to open packaging. So what's nice is this has a very pronounced tip, capable of getting right where you need to, that nice precise tip getting right in there. So if I had to run right along these seams, no problem. I like that it's precise enough that I may avoid actually damaging other goods. So, you know, when you go to open packaging, a lot of times you want to be very careful. So if I wanted to run this literally right down this seam, extremely precise, gives me the ability to cut with ease, and I'm not worried about damaging anything at all. So that works extremely well. The ability to slice through cardboard, definitely easy. It's actually pretty comfortable in the hand. For the most part, it's actually quite comfortable. And the hollow grind definitely slices very well. So as I mentioned, this Hydra Knives Buzzard reminds me of a type of utility knife. So here I have some hose. This is actually pretty rugged hose. I mean, you'll see it's not rubber. I don't know exactly what they call this. But, you know, let's see if I can get through this. I mean, a good utility knife should be able to do this job. I'm wondering if I can just simply slice this at this point. And my first pass went, I would say, like 5/6 or maybe, I don't know, 7/8 of the way through that. So the initial slice, very sharp, and definitely came close with a good overall clean cut to making it through there. So let's do a couple more cuts with this and see how we do. Now again, keeping in mind the fact that I'm gripping and ripping here, this is not necessarily, there you go, bam. I mean, this is not necessarily the best overall grip for this type of knife, but it should do the job. Now again, getting a nice slice on that. I didn't quite make it, not the knive's fault, kind of my technique. A reverse grip here, right through, no problem. That actually worked pretty well. Now I'm going to try to stab right down through this, which definitely, I mean, this style knife will do with ease. Kind of taking the hose and rotating it around, continuing to work this material and clean it up here. Let's clean up my cut, try to get it nice and square. I mean, this definitely works and cuts okay. You can see I did not get that square at all, but a good overall clean cut. Let's see what happens when I kind of try to fillet this thing open. I'm basically going to grip it a little bit away from the top, just so I don't cut myself. Filleting this easily, I mean, this goes right through with no problem at all. I mean, that was definitely super sharp and nice. In fact, I wasn't careful, and I almost cut entirely through the backside as well. Now the good thing after doing that work is that this did not hurt my hand. I mean, a little bit of sharpness. You got to keep in mind the fact that this doesn't have handle scales. That would maybe be a nice future iteration. Hint, hint, Hydra Knives. Build yourself some bolt-on scales. So you may want to think about how those would fit into this system, but that would be a nice add-on if people didn't care about the multi-purpose tools. But again, generally speaking, it didn't bother my hands. So now let's cut some rope. This is pretty much what you'd use maybe to tie up like lobster traps or things like that. It's not incredibly thick, about the thickness of my pinky, but grabbing it here, pretty much right through. So typical utility knives, as I said, should be able to do this type of work, and this Hydra Knives Buzzard can definitely do that. So whether you consider this an EDC knife or more of a utility knife, which I would kind of put it in that category, either way you call it, it can definitely do the work. And so if you're a subscriber to my channel, you know I typically use my knives for some sort of wood processing in some way, shape, or form. Now I'm just going to use this for a little bit of carving for a minute here. Get on this piece of pine. Now this just happens to be what I have in here and working in my workshop for the night. But getting on here and just doing some simple carving of this, it definitely does a decent job. It's not like insanely perfect just because it is a smaller blade, but you'll see here it is doing some pretty reasonable work over here to carve this away, get some overall pretty good chunks of wood flying off, and this can definitely do this type of work as well. But getting into a little bit of a finer carving task here, slowing down for a bit, and just kind of getting some little shavings and carving on this wood here. Just getting some little curls and trying to kind of work a little more controlled. It can do that too. Now, again, not the most comfortable, and then working on this rounded off pine here is not necessarily the best, but I can definitely make it work and it'll do what I need it to. So here, just getting some little tiny curls of wood off here if I wanted to maybe use this thing to help me process for a fire. But then again, right back into hogging away some of that wood. So right now I'm in my workshop looking around for things with nuts and bolts. And the reason why I'm doing that is because as I take a look at this Hydra Knives Buzzard, you'll see that it does have some holes cut in the handle to allow you to tighten nuts and bolts. And so as I looked over, I noticed that there were these bolts on my saw stand, and I just happened to notice that this one here is loose. Now this one is nice and tight, and getting this on here, it will move just a little bit, but this one here, it is definitely loose. So you can use this. Now, depending on how you're standing, you need to be a little bit careful with the blade. Now, if you didn't want to do this with the blade exposed, you could certainly add the Kydex. So now at this point, I am completely protected. So I can grab this a number of different ways. And getting on the bolt here, you will see that this actually, it's kind of surprising, but does work reasonably effectively. So you would be very limited to when this would be able to be used and when it would be effective. But for me right now, I actually needed this and it was here. So dumb luck, but worked out very well. And at this point, snugging that up, it is good and tight. So hey, nice job, Hydra Knives Buzzard. And so now, at this point, I will just clean up this blade a little touch after doing some utility work. It is nice to kind of clean the gunk and grime off the blade to give it a fair chance. I kind of want to look at this edge up close, get a good understanding of if there's any damage at all. So just starting here, cleaning it up real quick with a little bit of a greasy rag, and then I'll dry this thing off and get a closer look. And so now that this is cleaned off, as I look very close, I see literally no damage at all from what I can tell. So with that limited amount of work, it definitely held up and is still as absolutely razor sharp as it was before. And actually, now that I've actually cleaned up the blade with a little bit of grease and wiped it off, it may actually perform even a little bit better. So nice job. So alright guys, there you have it, a quick look at this Hydra Knives Buzzard. So again, a brand that you probably haven't heard of. In fact, I'm fairly certain. So if you're interested in being an early supporter and somebody to help out Hydra Knives and get them off the ground, that would be definitely excellent. And beyond that, maybe you're watching this today and it's the first time Hydra Knives has been announced. Maybe it's 5 years from now and Hydra Knives has been around for a long time and they are very popular. Well, who knows? But fact of the matter is, this is definitely cool today. I'm happy to have been able to help Hydra Knives get their product to the viewers and see it for the first time. So again, I'd like to say thank you very much to the people at Hydra Knives who have provided this product. Excellent job, generally very well done. Couple of minor modifications. If I can lean on this just a little bit and give you my advice, touch up a couple of these very small details to help this go from a great knife to a perfect knife. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.